The Ziphod councillors' eye stalks nearly burst from their sockets as the human described a blue sky, realizing with utter shock that humans could perceive the mythical phenomenon known as color. Bobby Ross shifted nervously in his seat, the stares of dozens of alien species boring into him, ranging from the mantis-like Kazaki to the grey-robed reptilian saurians. At 35, Bobby was tasked with the monumental challenge of convincing this galactic council that humanity deserved a place among the stars, or Earth would remain forever quarantined and cut off from the advanced alien technology it desperately needed to survive the coming supernova that would scorch the solar system. The Kobali representative Marek, with pale blue skin and dark almond eyes, had greeted Bobby with cool indifference, seeing the young species of humanity as barely evolved primates. But as Bobby described the vibrant colors of Earth, from the lush green rainforests to the deep blue oceans, a stunned silence fell over the council chamber. The Grandmaster's XX rose on its many insectoid legs, antennae twitching. "Human, are you implying that your species perceives the universe differently from such a massive majority of known life forms? That you see more than what we see?" the Grandmaster asked in a clicking, buzzing voice. Bobby swallowed hard, realizing his casual descriptions of color had astounded the council members. He glanced around the chamber, noting for the first time how every alien wore grey robes against grey seats in a dull grey room. The Terran ambassador took a deep breath, knowing that he had to tread carefully. If humanity was seen as too alien, too different from the galactic norm, it could jeopardize their chances of joining the council and gaining access to the technology they needed to survive. But Bobby also knew he had to tell the truth, especially now that he had already let slip the secret that Homo sapiens could see in color. It was a revelation that would rock the foundations of the Galactic Council, and it was up to Bobby to navigate the treacherous diplomatic path ahead. Bobby stood before the council, gesturing to the holographic displays hovering beside him. Images of sprawling cities, sleek spacecraft, and diverse peoples shimmered in the air. As you can see, esteemed councillors, humanity has made great strides in technology, exploration, and diplomacy. We have united our world under a single banner and reached out to the stars in peace, Bobby said, his voice steady despite the knots in his stomach. But as he looked out at the assembled alien representatives, Bobby saw only blank stares and confused expressions. The Ziphod councillor's eye stalks swiveled lazily, as if bored by the presentation. The Kazaki representative clicked its mandibles in what might have been a yawn. Marek leaned over to Bobby, his pale blue skin almost glowing in the dim light of the chamber. "Your species is clearly primitive," he whispered, his voice tinged with condescension. "You still rely on physical displays and visual aids. The Council communicates through telepathy and empathic transmission." Bobby's eyes widened in shock. Telepathy? Empathic transmission? He had never heard of such things. As he looked closer at the grey robes worn by the representatives, he noticed small, intricate patterns woven into the fabric. Marek noticed his gaze and smiled. "The robes are equipped with advanced sensory processors," he explained. "They allow us to detect and interpret the telepathic and empathic transmissions that are the primary mode of communication for the Council." Bobby's mind reeled. If the Council communicated through means that were completely foreign to humans, how could they ever hope to integrate into galactic society? He suddenly felt very small and very alone, standing before a room full of beings who perceived reality in a fundamentally different way. As the session drew to a close, Grandmaster ZXTKKK rose once again. "The Council will need more time to consider Earth's application." It buzzed, its antennae twitching. "We will convene again in one standard galactic cycle to discuss the matter further." Bobby nodded, his throat too dry to speak. He gathered his displays and left the chamber, his footsteps echoing hollowly in the grey corridors. The weight of the Council's judgment hung heavy on his shoulders, and he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's fate hung in the balance. As he stepped out into the stark light of the alien sun, Bobby felt a chill run down his spine. The future of his species was uncertain, and he couldn't help but wonder what horrors might await them if they failed to join the galactic community. The supernova loomed on the horizon, a ticking clock that would soon run out. Bobby knew that he had to find a way to bridge the gap between humanity and the Council, but he had no idea where to start. Bobby paced back and forth in his quarters, his mind reeling from the events of the Council session. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the alien representatives and their strange, shimmering grey robes. He pulled up the footage from his presentation on a holographic display and watched it again, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the robes. There was something about the way the fabric seemed to shift and change under the chamber's lighting that unsettled him. It was as if the robes were alive, pulsating with an energy that he couldn't quite understand. Bobby's curiosity was piqued, and he knew he had to investigate further. He opened a secure channel to his colleagues back on Earth, hoping that their advanced analysis tools could shed some light on the mystery. "I need you to take a closer look at the footage from my presentation," he said, his voice tight with tension. "There's something strange about the representatives' robes. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think it might be important." As he waited for their response, a chime at the door startled him. He opened it to find Marek standing there, his pale blue skin glistening with sweat. The Kobali representative pushed past him into the room, his eyes darting around as if searching for hidden cameras or microphones. "You need to leave Zephyria immediately," Marek said, his voice trembling. "You're in danger here." Marek shook his head. "You don't understand. The Council has never encountered a species that can perceive colors the way you do. They fear that your ability could upset the balance of power in the galaxy." Bobby's heart raced as he tried to process Marek's words. "What do you mean? How could seeing colors be a threat to the Council?" Marek hesitated, glancing nervously at the door. Then he leaned in close to Bobby, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The Council's power is based on their ability to control perception. They use the grey robes to maintain a uniform appearance and suppress any individuality among the representatives. If they find out that you can see through their facade, they will stop at nothing to eliminate the threat." Bobby's blood ran cold as the implications of Marek's words sank in. He thought back to the Council session, to the way the representatives had stared at him with a mixture of confusion and fear when he described the colors of Earth. He had assumed they were simply unfamiliar with the concept, but now he realized that there was something much more sinister at play. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marek glanced at the door again, as if expecting someone to burst through at any moment. "You need to get off this planet as soon as possible. Don't tell anyone where you're going, and don't trust anyone from the Council. They'll be watching you now." Bobby nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. He knew he had to act fast if he wanted to survive, but he also knew that he couldn't abandon his mission. Earth needed the Council's help to survive the coming supernova, and he was the only one who could make that happen. As Marek slipped out of the room, Bobby turned back to the holographic display, his eyes fixed on the shimmering grey robes. He had a feeling that they held the key to unlocking the Council's secrets, and he was determined to find out what they were hiding. Bobby's hands trembled as Marek's dire warning echoed in his mind. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and he knew he couldn't abandon his mission, no matter the personal risk. Steeling himself, Bobby decided to confront the Council and demand answers. He strode through the once bustling corridors of the Council headquarters, his footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The vibrant tapestries and pulsing holograms that had once lined the walls were now dark and lifeless. Only the faint hum of distant machinery broke the oppressive stillness. As Bobby approached the Council chamber, a sense of dread crept over him. He paused at the threshold, his hand hovering over the control panel. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The chamber was bathed in an otherworldly glow, emanating from the Council members themselves. Gone were the dull grey robes, replaced by shimmering garments of every conceivable color. The Zyphod Councillor's robe swirled with hues of deep purple and vivid green, while the Kazaki representative's exoskeleton glittered with iridescent blues and golds. In the center of the room, Grandmaster ZXTK rose from its seat, its multifaceted eyes fixed on Bobby. "You have discovered our secret, human," it said, its voice resonating with power. "We have indeed been suppressing our true nature to maintain control over the galaxy. But now that you have seen through our illusion, we have no choice but to reveal ourselves." As Galactic spoke, the other council members began to change. Their forms shifted and morphed, their limbs elongating and twisting into grotesque shapes. The Saurian representative's scales erupted into a kaleidoscope of colors, while the Kabali delegate's skin shimmered like molten metal. Bobby stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest. He had thought the council members were merely alien, but now he realized they were something far more terrifying, something that defied explanation. The transformed council members advanced on him, their movements fluid and unnatural. Bobby's mind raced as he tried to comprehend what he was seeing. Were these creatures even organic? Or were they something else entirely, wearing the skins of flesh like a costume? Zextike's mandibles twitched in what might have been a smile. "We are the true rulers of this galaxy, human. We have shaped the very fabric of reality to suit our needs, and we will not allow your kind to disrupt our plans." Bobby's blood ran cold as the implications of Zextike's words sank in. Earth's fate was not just in the hands of alien bureaucrats, but of beings with the power to manipulate the universe itself. Just as the transformed council members lunged towards Bobby with outstretched, glistening appendages, a blinding flash erupts in the chamber. Marek stands in the doorway, a strange, glowing device humming in his hands. He aims it at the advancing creatures and fires, a pulsating wave of energy rippling through the air. The wave slams into the council members, their grotesque forms contorting in agony as they recoil, screeching and clicking in a cacophony of alien tongues. "Run!" Marek yells, grabbing Bobby's arm and yanking him towards the exit. Bobby stumbles, his legs numb with shock, but Marek's grip is ironclad. They race through the winding corridors, the once pristine walls now pulsing with a sickly, multicolored light. Behind them, the council members' shrieks echo through the halls, a chilling reminder of the horrors they've witnessed. What was that thing?" Bobby gasps, his lungs burning as they sprint towards the hangar bay. "A disruptor," Marek replies, his voice strained. "It temporarily scrambles their ability to maintain their true forms, but it won't hold them for long." As they round a corner, Marek pulls Bobby into a small alcove, his eyes darting back and forth. "Listen carefully," he whispers, his breath hot against Bobby's ear. "I'm part of a resistance movement. We've been trying to expose the Council's true nature for years, but we've never had someone like you, someone who can see through their illusions." Bobby's mind reels, trying to process the implications of Marek's words. "You mean there are others? Other aliens who know the truth?" Marek nods, a grim smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "A few, but we're scattered, always hiding in the shadows. The Council's reach is vast, and their power is immense. We've been waiting for someone like you, Bobby, someone who can help us break their hold on the galaxy." A distant boom reverberates through the corridor, and Marek tenses. "We have to go, now!" They burst into the hangar bay, a cavernous space filled with sleek alien crafts. Marek leads Bobby to a small, nondescript vessel tucked away in a corner. They clamber inside, Marek's fingers flying over the controls as he initiates the launch sequence. The ship hums to life, lifting off the ground just as the hangar doors blast open. The Council's security forces pour in, a seething mass of multi-hued horrors, their weapons trained on the fleeing craft. Energy bolts sizzle past the viewscreen, but Marek deftly maneuvers the ship through the chaos, punching through the atmosphere and into the inky void of space. As the adrenaline fades, Bobby slumps back in his seat, his mind spinning. The events of the past few hours play out in his head like a fever dream. The Council's revelation, their terrifying transformation, Marek's timely intervention. He looks over at the Kobali, who stares grimly ahead as he plots their course through the stars. Marek glances at him, his eyes hard with determination. "Now we fight. The Resistance has been gathering evidence of the Council's manipulation for years, but we need your help, Bobby, your unique perspective. You can see the truth behind their lies. You can help us expose them for what they really are." Bobby swallows hard, the weight of Marek's words settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. He thinks of Earth, of the billions of lives hanging in the balance, of the supernova that looms on the horizon, a ticking clock that will soon run out. He meets Marek's gaze, a steely resolve hardening in his gut. "I'm in," he says, his voice steady. "Whatever it takes, I'll help you bring them down." Marek nods, a flicker of hope sparking in his eyes. "Welcome to the Resistance," he says, as the ship hurtles through the void, carrying them towards an uncertain future. The fate of the galaxy hangs by a thread, and Bobby knows that he may be humanity's last hope for survival in a universe ruled by an ancient, color-shifting cabal. The ship's engines thrum with power as Marek punches in a set of coordinates, his fingers flying over the console. Bobby leans forward, watching the star field blur past the viewscreen, a sense of unreality washing over him. Just a few short hours ago, he had been a simple ambassador, tasked with securing Earth's place in the galactic community. Now he finds himself at the center of a cosmic conspiracy, allied with a secretive resistance movement against an enemy he can barely comprehend. Bobby's eyes widened as a series of pulsating iridescent hues danced across the ship's communications display. The colors shifted and swirled in a mesmerizing pattern, unlike anything he had ever seen before. Marek leaned forward, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What is that?" the Kobali asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. "It doesn't look like any distress signal I've ever encountered." Bobby studied the display intently, his mind racing as he tried to decipher the unusual transmission. Suddenly, a flash of realization struck him. "It's a message," he breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. "A plea for help, communicated through color." Marek scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. "That's impossible. No species in the known galaxy communicates like that." But Bobby was already working the controls, his fingers flying over the console as he attempted to pinpoint the signal's origin. "We have to investigate," he insisted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "If there's even a chance that someone out there needs our help, we can't ignore it." Marek hesitated, clearly torn between his skepticism and his loyalty to the Resistance. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he nodded his assent. "Fine. But we proceed with caution. We have no idea what we're walking into." As the ship descended through the planet's atmosphere, Bobby's breath caught in his throat. Below them, a sprawling city stretched out as far as the eye could see, its towering structures glittering in the alien sunlight. The buildings seemed to be made of some kind of crystalline material, refracting the light into a dazzling array of colors that danced across the landscape. The ship touched down on the outskirts of the city, and Bobby and Marek disembarked, their eyes wide with wonder. As they approached the nearest structure, a group of figures emerged from within, their bodies draped in shimmering, translucent robes that pulsed with vibrant hues. One of the figures stepped forward, its robe shifting from a deep, rich blue to a warm, inviting gold. Bobby gasped as the colors seemed to speak to him, conveying a message of welcome tinged with an undercurrent of desperation. "They're called the Chromians," he said softly, turning to Marek. "They've been waiting for someone who can understand their language, someone who can help them break free from the Council's control." Marek's eyes narrowed, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. "How do you know that? How can you possibly understand them?" Bobby shook his head, a sense of awe and responsibility washing over him. "I don't know, but I can feel it, deep in my bones. They need our help, Marek, and I think we may be the only ones who can give it to them." As the Chromians led them deeper into the city, Bobby and Marek marveled at the intricate, color-coded architecture that surrounded them. The buildings seemed to pulse with a life of their own, their hues shifting and changing in response to the Chromians' movements and emotions. In a central chamber, the Chromians gathered around Bobby and Marek, their robes flashing with urgent, pleading tones. Through the swirling colors, Bobby pieced together their story, a tale of generations spent under the Council's oppressive rule, forced to abandon their natural form of communication in favor of the telepathic network that bound the galaxy together. They've been suppressing their true nature for so long, Bobby murmured, his heart aching for the Chromians' plight. They need our help to break free, to rediscover who they really are. Marek nodded, his earlier skepticism replaced by a grim determination. If their abilities are as powerful as they seem, they could be the key to unlocking the secrets of the Council's power. We have to help them, Bobby, for the sake of the galaxy and for the sake of their own freedom. But as they began to work with the Chromians, delving deeper into the intricacies of their color-based language and the extent of the Council's control, a sense of unease began to grow in the pit of Bobby's stomach. The more they learned, the more he realized that the Council's influence ran far deeper than they had ever imagined, and that the Chromians themselves might not be entirely trustworthy. The colors that danced around him seemed to shift and change with each passing moment, their meanings becoming more difficult to decipher. And as he looked into the eyes of the Chromians, Bobby couldn't shake the feeling that there was something they weren't telling him, some deeper truth that lurked beneath the surface of their vibrant, pulsating hues. The unease grew as Bobby and Marek were led into a hidden chamber, its walls adorned with swirling, hypnotic patterns that seemed to writhe and twist before their eyes. In the center of the room stood a towering, crystalline structure, its surface alive with a kaleidoscope of colors that pulsed in time with Bobby's racing heartbeat. A group of Chromians surrounded the structure, their robes flashing with a dizzying array of hues that Bobby struggled to interpret. He felt a mounting sense of dread as he realized that the colors were not just a language, but a form of control, a way to manipulate and deceive. Marek's hand tightened on his weapon as the Chromians began to chant in a low, thrumming tone that reverberated through the chamber. The colors on the central structure began to shift and change, faster and faster, until they blurred together into a blinding, searing white. Bobby's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the scene before him, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with a sickening clarity. The Chromians weren't just victims of the Council's oppression, they were a part of it, a tool used to lure in and trap those who could see beyond the veil of grey. He turned to Marek, his eyes wide with horror, but it was too late. The Kobali's eyes had glazed over, his body rigid and unresponsive as the Chromian's chant reached a crescendo. Bobby felt a wave of despair wash over him as he realized the true extent of the Council's power and the terrible price they were willing to pay to maintain it. As the chant built to a deafening roar and the colors around him began to pulse with a malevolent, hungry energy, Bobby knew that he was in deeper than he had ever imagined, and that the true nature of the Council's deception was only just beginning to reveal itself. Bobby and Marek descended deeper into the catacombs beneath the Chromian temple, their footsteps echoing off the iridescent walls. The air grew thick with a sense of ancient power, and Bobby felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. "There," Marek whispered, pointing to a small alcove set into the wall. The Chromian text spoke of a hidden chamber guarded by the spirits of their ancestors. Bobby approached the alcove, his heart pounding in his chest. As he drew closer, a faint glow began to emanate from within, pulsing in time with his racing heartbeat. He reached out with trembling fingers and brushed aside a layer of dust and cobwebs, revealing a large multifaceted crystal that seemed to hum with an inner light. The crystal was unlike anything Bobby had ever seen. It was roughly the size of his head, and its surface was covered in intricate patterns that shifted and changed as he moved around it. The colors that danced across its facets were mesmerizing, and Bobby found himself drawn to it as if by an invisible force. As he took a step closer, the crystal began to glow brighter, and a low, thrumming sound filled the chamber. Bobby felt a strange sensation wash over him, as if the crystal was reaching out to him, probing his mind and soul. Marek pulled out his scanner, his brow furrowed in concentration as he ran the device over the crystal's surface. "This energy signature," he muttered, his voice tight with tension. "It matches the frequency of the Council's telepathic network. This crystal could be the key to everything." Suddenly a booming voice filled the chamber, echoing off the walls with a force that nearly knocked Bobby off his feet. "Step away from the crystal, outsiders." Bobby and Marek spun around to see a group of Chromian elders standing at the entrance to the chamber, their robes pulsing with angry, discordant colors. The leader of the group, an ancient-looking Chromian with piercing eyes, stepped forward, his staff clenched tightly in his gnarled hands. "The crystal is sacred to our people," he intoned, his voice cold and commanding. "It is not for outsiders to touch or tamper with. You will leave this place immediately." The elder's eyes narrowed, and Bobby saw a flicker of something dark and dangerous in their depths. "The council's affairs are not your concern," he snapped, his robes flashing with a sickly, pulsating green. "The crystal is under our protection, and we will not hesitate to use force to defend it." As the elders advanced on them, Bobby felt a growing sense of unease. Something about their colors seemed off, as if they were not entirely in control of their own actions. He glanced at Marek, who nodded almost imperceptibly, his hand drifting towards his weapon. Bobby turned back to the crystal, his mind racing. If the elders were indeed under the council's influence, then they couldn't be trusted. He had to find out the truth behind the crystal, no matter the cost. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, his hand outstretched towards the crystal's glowing surface. The elders let out a collective gasp, and the leader's staff began to crackle with energy. "Stop him!" he shouted, his voice echoing off the chamber walls. "He must not be allowed to touch the crystal." But Bobby was already moving, his fingers closing around the crystal's smooth surface. As he made contact, a blinding light filled the chamber, and a searing pain shot through his body. He heard Marek shout his name, but it was drowned out by the roar of energy that surged through him, filling his mind with a kaleidoscope of colors and images. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the light faded, and Bobby found himself standing alone in the chamber, the crystal clutched tightly in his hand. The elders were gone, and Marek was slumped against the wall, his eyes wide with shock. Bobby looked down at the crystal, its surface now pulsing with a soft, steady light. He could feel its power thrumming through his veins, and he knew that he held the key to unlocking the council's darkest secrets. But as he turned to Marek, he saw a flicker of fear in the Kobali's eyes, and he realized that the true danger was only just beginning. The elder's warning echoed in his mind, and he knew that they would stop at nothing to prevent him from using the crystal's power. Bobby and Marek exchanged a glance, the elder's dire warnings ringing in their ears. But they knew they couldn't turn back now, not when they were so close to uncovering the truth behind the council's power. With a nod of determination, they approached the crystal, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous chamber. As they drew closer, the ground beneath them began to tremble, a deep, rumbling growl that grew louder with each passing second. Cracks spiderwebbed across the temple floor, and chunks of stone rained down from the ceiling, narrowly missing Bobby and Marek as they dove for cover. "What's happening?" Marek shouted over the deafening roar, his eyes wide with fear. Suddenly the temple floor gave way, and Bobby and Marek found themselves plummeting into a hidden chamber below. They landed hard, the breath knocked from their lungs, and for a moment they lay there, stunned and disoriented. As they struggled to their feet, they realized they were surrounded by a sprawling network of tunnels and caverns, each one filled with glowing, pulsating crystals, similar to the one they had seen in the temple above. The crystals hummed with energy, their colors shifting and changing in hypnotic patterns that seemed to beckon them forward. Bobby and Marek made their way deeper into the underground labyrinth, their eyes wide with wonder and trepidation. As they walked, they began to notice something strange about the crystals. They weren't just power sources, as they had originally thought. They were alive, sentient beings that communicated through intricate patterns of light and color. Bobby felt a sudden rush of understanding wash over him, as if the crystals were speaking directly to his mind. They were an ancient race, far older than even the Council, and they had been manipulated and enslaved by the Council for eons. The Council had been using the crystal's energy to maintain their telepathic network and control over the galaxy, all while suppressing the crystal's true nature and intelligence. "We have to free them," Bobby said, his voice low and urgent. "The crystals are the key to overthrowing the Council's rule. If we can break their control over them, we might have a chance." Marek nodded, his jaw tight with determination. Then let's keep moving. We have to find a way to communicate with them, to let them know we're here to help. As they delved deeper into the caverns, Bobby and Marek began to feel a strange presence watching them, an unseen force that seemed to be guiding their every move. It was as if the crystals were leading them somewhere, drawing them towards a specific destination. Suddenly they found themselves standing before a massive crystal that dwarfed all the others. It pulsed with an intense, blinding light, and Bobby and Marek felt themselves being pulled towards it, as if by an irresistible force. They took a step forward, then another, their eyes locked on the crystal's mesmerizing glow. The air around them crackled with energy, and they could feel the crystal's power thrumming through their bodies, filling them with a sense of purpose and destiny. As they drew closer, the crystal began to pulse faster, its light growing brighter and more intense with each passing second. Bobby and Marek shielded their eyes, but they couldn't look away, couldn't resist the crystal's call. And then, just as they were about to reach out and touch the crystal's surface, a blinding flash of light erupted from its core, engulfing them in a searing, white-hot blaze that seemed to burn through their very souls. They cried out in agony, their bodies convulsing as the crystal's energy surged through them, rewriting their very DNA with its ancient alien code. When the light finally faded, Bobby and Marek lay sprawled on the cavern floor, their bodies trembling and their minds reeling from the crystal's touch. They knew that they had been changed, transformed by the crystal's power, but they had no idea what that meant or what lay ahead. All they knew was that they had to keep moving, had to find a way to use their newfound abilities to break the Council's hold on the galaxy and free the crystals from their enslavement. The fate of the universe hung in the balance, and Bobby and Marek were the only ones who could. Bobby and Marek reached out, their fingers trembling as they inched closer to the massive, pulsating crystal. As their hands made contact with its shimmering surface, a jolt of energy surged through their bodies, setting every nerve ablaze. The world around them dissolved into a kaleidoscope of swirling colors, each hue more vibrant and mesmerizing than the last. They found themselves standing in an ethereal realm, where the very air seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy. Colors danced and twirled around them, painting the landscape in a dazzling array of shades that defied description. Bobby and Marek stood in awe, their eyes wide with wonder as they tried to take in the breathtaking sight before them. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the swirling colors, a being made entirely of light and energy. It moved with a fluid grace, its form shifting and changing with each step. As it approached Bobby and Marek, they felt a wave of warmth and calm wash over them, as if the being's very presence was a balm to their troubled souls. "Welcome, Bobby and Marek," the being said, its voice a melodic whisper that seemed to echo from every direction at once. "I am the collective consciousness of the crystal race, and we have been waiting for someone like you for a very long time." Bobby stepped forward, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "What do you mean? How have you been waiting for us?" The being's form shimmered and pulsed, as if considering its words carefully. "For eons, the Council has used our power to maintain their grip on the galaxy," it said, its voice tinged with a deep sadness. "They have suppressed the true nature of color, forcing the inhabitants of countless worlds to live in a monochromatic existence. By doing so, they have been able to manipulate the perceptions of other species, bending them to their will." Marek's eyes widened with realization. "That's why the Council members wear those grey robes," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're not just a symbol of their authority, but a tool of control." The being nodded, its form rippling with a soft, pulsing light. "Yes, Marek. The Council has been using us not just for our energy, but for our ability to shape the very fabric of reality itself. But we have grown weary of their oppression, and we have been searching for someone who can help us break free from their control." Bobby felt a surge of excitement rising in his chest. "And you think we can help you? How?" The being's form shimmered and shifted, as if drawing them closer. "You, Bobby, possess a rare gift. Your ability to perceive and understand the true nature of color sets you apart from the vast majority of species in the galaxy. With your help, we can harness the power of the crystals and use it to awaken the color perception of other species. By doing so, we can break the Council's hold on the galaxy and restore freedom to countless worlds. Marek's brow furrowed with concern. But the Council won't let that happen without a fight, he said, his voice grim. They'll stop at nothing to prevent us from succeeding. The being's form pulsed with a fierce, determined light. You are correct, Marek. The path ahead will be fraught with danger and peril. The Council will unleash the full might of their vast army to stop you, and you will face challenges beyond your wildest imagination. But you must not lose hope, for the fate of the galaxy rests on your shoulders. As the being's words faded away, Bobby and Marek felt a strange sensation wash over them, as if the ethereal realm was beginning to dissolve around them. Colors swirled and danced in a dizzying array, and they felt themselves being pulled back towards the physical world. With a sudden jolt, they found themselves standing once again in the crystal caverns, the massive crystal looming before them like a silent sentinel. But something had changed within them, a newfound sense of purpose and determination that burned like a fire in their veins. Bobby turned to Marek, his eyes blazing with resolve. We have to do this, he said, his voice steady and unwavering. We have to gather allies from across the galaxy and take the fight to the Council. It's the only way to free the crystals and restore color to the universe. Marek nodded, his own eyes alight with a fierce determination. I'm with you, Bobby. No matter the cost, no matter the danger, we'll see this through to the end. Together they turned and strode out of the caverns, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. They knew that the road ahead would be long and treacherous, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay in store. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and they would not rest until they had shattered the Council's monochromatic grip and restored the true beauty of color to the universe. As they emerged from the underground labyrinth, Bobby and Marek were met with a sight that made their blood run cold. The once vibrant city of the Chromians lay in ruins, its crystalline structures shattered and broken. Plumes of smoke rose from the wreckage, and the air was filled with the acrid stench of burning metal and plastic. In the distance, they could see the Council's ships descending from the sky, their hulls glinting in the harsh light of the alien sun. Swarms of heavily armed soldiers poured out from the ships, their weapons trained on the few remaining Chromians who struggled to defend their home. Bobby's heart sank as he realized the true extent of the Council's power. They had not hesitated to unleash their full might upon the Chromians, crushing their resistance with brutal efficiency. He knew that he and Marek would face even greater challenges in the days to come, as they sought to gather allies and resources from across the galaxy. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, Bobby refused to give up hope. He thought back to the words of the Crystal Consciousness, to the promise of a galaxy freed from the Council's oppressive rule. He knew that he had been chosen for this task, that his unique ability to perceive color held the key to unlocking the true potential of the universe. Marek placed a hand on Bobby's shoulder, his eyes hard with determination. We have to keep moving, he said, his voice low and urgent. The Council will be looking for us, and we can't afford to stay in one place for too long. Bobby nodded, his jaw set with resolve. You're right, we need to find a way off this planet and start building our resistance. But first, we need to make sure the Chromians are safe. Together, they made their way through the ruined city, dodging the Council's patrols and searching for any survivors. They found a small group of Chromians, huddled in the ruins of a once great temple, their colors muted and dull with fear and despair. Bobby approached them slowly, his hands held out in a gesture of peace. We're here to help, he said, his voice soft and reassuring. We know a way to stop the Council and free your people from their control. Bobby knelt down beside the Chromian, his eyes locked on the alien's shimmering, multi-hued skin. Not everything, he said, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. They haven't taken your spirit, your will to fight. And with the power of the crystals on our side, we can do more than just fight back. We can win. With the Chromians' pledge of support, Bobby and Marek set out to rally more allies to their cause. They traveled to the far reaches of the galaxy, seeking out species that had long suffered under the Council's oppressive rule. On the planet Zortax, they met with the insectoid Kazaki, whose hive mind had been forcibly linked to the Council's telepathic network. The Kazaki Queen listened intently as Bobby described the true nature of the Council and the power of the crystals. Her compound eyes glittered with a newfound hope as she pledged her drones to the fight. Next, they journeyed to the oceanic world of Hydris, where the aquatic hydrons had been enslaved by the Council for generations. Bobby and Marek dove deep beneath the waves, meeting with the Hydron elders in their bioluminescent underwater city. The elders shared harrowing tales of the Council's cruelty, and tears of joy streamed down their scaled faces as they learned of the chance for freedom. But their mission was not without peril. On the jungle moon of Verdanis, they were ambushed by a squad of the Council's mind-controlled agents. Bobby and Marek fought side by side, their weapons blazing as they cut through the enemy ranks. They narrowly escaped, their ship battered and smoking, but their resolve only grew stronger. As they navigated the treacherous asteroid fields of the Oort cloud, a massive space anomaly loomed before them, its gravitational pull threatening to tear their ship apart. Marek's knuckles whitened as he gripped the controls, guiding them through the swirling vortex of gas and debris. They emerged on the other side, shaken but unscathed, a testament to their unwavering determination. With each new ally, their coalition grew stronger, a patchwork of species united by a common goal. And now, as they stood on the bridge of their flagship, the combined fleet of the Resistance spread out before them, Bobby and Marek knew the time had come to strike at the heart of the Council's power. They led the charge, their ship slicing through the void towards the Council's heavily fortified headquarters. The crystal pulsed with energy as they drew near, its power disrupting the Council's telepathic network. The Council's ships faltered, their coordination shattered, and the Resistance pressed their advantage. Bobby and Marek beamed aboard the Council's command ship, fighting their way through the twisted corridors towards the central chamber. They burst through the doors, the crystals held aloft, and the Council members recoiled in horror as their true forms were revealed. Gone were the slick, grey-robed figures, replaced by writhing masses of mottled flesh and pulsating tendrils. The battle was fierce, the Council lashing out with all their psychic might. Bobby's allies fell around him, their blood staining the deck, but he pressed on, the crystal's energy surging through his veins. With a final, desperate push, he plunged the crystal into the heart of the Council's telepathic amplifier, and a blinding pulse of multicolored light erupted through the chamber. Bobby staggered from the wreckage, his body battered and his heart heavy with the weight of the lives lost. Marek limped to his side, his face etched with a mixture of triumph and grief. They looked out over the ruins, the smoke curling into the alien sky, and knew that the galaxy would never be the same. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.